I think there's a weird bright thing in the sky. I haven't seen it in a while. All right, just kind of a geopolitical update. Nothing in specific, but just kind of a lot of stuff going on. I haven't been able to post there in the past couple of days because it's starting to get busy again. So, but that said, lots going on. We have the Scottish referendum coming up. I'm going to be covering that in its own special video. I don't know everything about Scotland, but there's an awful lot of Scottish heritage here. And then, of course, there's a lot of people here taking notice in my province in Quebec about how Scotland's getting, their simple referendum question worked out with such, looks like it might be a go, and what that can mean for the world. Now the thing is, there's just too much to dive into there. That's why I'm going to save it as its own video, probably by Friday. I just want to see how it's going to turn out. I could make the video now, but the problem is that I think what we're going to see, depending on a yes or no vote from Scotland, is how it's going to affect the rest of the world, and it will. I think if Scotland goes the way of Iceland, that is going to put a crunch on the U.S. dollar, not directly, but indirectly, because it shrinks the Anglo-American empire. And again, it means central bankers will lose control of that area, kind of like in Iceland. That's why you never hear of Iceland look. In 2008, when Iceland threw their corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, you never heard anything about it on the mainstream news at all. Why? Because they don't want that to catch on, and they've got the right idea. I'm not saying Iceland is perfect, but on the other hand, when people break the law, at least they throw people in jail there, And coming from the country that has like the lowest crime rate ever. Now, Scotland versus Quebec, there's a lot of similarities, but there's way more differences in their referendum compared to the one here. Number one, this is the most corrupt province in the country. People don't, they don't want to be. We're Canadians. We're going to be Canadians. They may be French Canadians, but trust me, we're Canadians. History and all, people tend to side with Canada. That said, I'll address that in a separate issue. There's also a couple of other places that are, I think Catalonia's, I don't know if they separated yet or not. I think they were talking about it. There's a whole bunch of places that are trying to separate. There's always been a secession movement, say, in Texas and stuff like that. But you could see, too, as a plan, I've always thought the divide and conquer plan of the United States was a major play. The bankers would love to have 52 independent countries to pick apart. Again, believe it or not, the states is actually stronger together, each state banding together. It's just they need to throw their corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, which they haven't done, but they should. And the bankers know this, so they want to actually break up the states before that, because at that point, that's when China comes in and they're already coming in and buying up everything anyway. But it'll make it even easier for them, because they can control, again, when, let's say Texas and New York State, okay? We'll take those two. Let's say China, let's say the states, every state breaks on up into its own sovereign country. We'll just say for hypothetical. So China comes in, or maybe not China, but it could be anybody. We'll say, for example, China. They come in and say, okay, well, we're taking over here. This is our... people in the neighboring states, say Pennsylvania or Illinois or someplace like that, say, well, that's their problem. And then Illinois gets conquered by some other foreign adventure, whatever. And then Pennsylvania, and then it works its way down. Next thing you know, you're in Florida. And by that time, it's like, oh, do we band together and create a new, a new state, like a new country again? By that time, it's too late. Why? Because they've already got a foothold. So, and it won't be like conquer as in rolling tanks so much. It'll be conquer as in they're going to come and buy up everything, like they already have. And again, that's part of the free trade, Chinese free trade zones. There's about 270 of them being built in the States. Like basically, these are Chinese sovereign nations. This is the big thing that you're not hearing on the mainstream media. It's not that these people are buying up. What they're doing is they're accepting payment for the U.S. treasuries. Like China bought 10% of the U.S. debt, something like that. Okay, so that's billions of dollars. So 10% of, well, at the time was $4 billion or $4 trillion or whatever. But what's ended up happening now is quite simply is that China, like they don't want to be stuck with useless pieces of paper or digital currency that's not even worth the paper it's not even printed on. What they want instead is to turn it into something. So, okay, well, that factory's out of business. Okay, well, you owe us this much. Just take it off of that and we'll take the factory. They're getting assets. And all banks right now are being told to acquire a certain amount of assets. Basically, every bank is preparing for a massive collapse. And there are banks that are already just kind of, the dominoes are already starting to fall. Started with, I think, Portugal and about a month or so ago. And there's a few African banks that are already gone down. With the Ebola thing, basically the central bankers are going to get in there, saying, oh, well, your economies are destroyed because of the Ebola crisis, which I'm starting to really believe it's manufactured. Now, yes, they are that evil. Yes, they would do that. Why? Because now all these economies that are going to need bailouts from the central bankers, but they're basically all the countries that have the Ebola outbreaks in it are all the countries that are basically China friendly. Now, this is how, and again, with China buying up all the world's reserves of gold, basically the daily production of gold, that's basically what they're buying on a daily basis, is the daily production. They're doing this not because they want to back their dollar with gold, they want to do it so that the US dollar has no place to go. So the tides are really, really turning, where the predators now become the prey. Basically, the predatory transatlantic Anglo American banks are now, being put into the crunch where, okay, well, people are going to devalue the dollar simply due to the fact that they're going to send their U.S. treasuries back home, and they're starting, many BRICS nations, including Canada, is doing this as well. They're saying, hey, you know what? All the U.S. exports is debt and bombs. Okay, so even the UK, okay, which is a part of the Anglo-American paradigm. Again, these are factions that are fighting, but basically even them, they're like, okay, well, we're going to switch over and play friendly with China. So what happens is, and you're seeing it already, it's like, especially with the Ukraine incident and all that, the United States has basically alienated itself. It's not going to alienate itself. It has alienated itself. The paradigm switch is not official yet, but it will be felt, and it is being felt. And the thing is that the people, by the time they realize what has actually happened, that's the thing. Like, people they're confused. They're like, why is all this stuff going on? They don't understand what it's about. But it's basically a transfer of wealth. Basically, take your useless pieces of paper. Paper money is not wealth. I can't stress that enough. It is medium of exchange. That's all it is. So if you are a central banker and you're holding land, gold, things that you can hold in your hand or stand upon or build upon, mines, power companies, if you own those things, you own assets. Does it really matter what the denomination is paid in? No. It's what people are comfortable. Marbles could be a currency if people believed in it. In fact, years ago, the tally stick, it was a piece of stick that had notches in it, cut in half. The creditor kept the one half, and the loanee, I guess, kept the other half, and to avoid counterfeit. And this worked for 700 years. I mean, think about the concept nowadays of people paying each other with sticks. Here, you get one half of a stick with a certain notch pattern in it, and you take the other notch pattern, and we barter and trade with sticks. It's a currency. It's a medium of exchange. People said we accept that as payment. So you think money is really that sound? Barter and trade, medium of exchange is really just, like, for example, if I say I was going to give you $1 million, would you take it? Of course you would. If I said they were Zimbabwe dollars, you probably wouldn't, right? Because it's like, well, it's not even worth the paper. It's like it's not even worth the paper it's printed on. But if I said I was going to give you $1 million US, you'd probably say yeah. If I was going to give you €1 million, you'd say yeah. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because like, even though, like, if you look at it, it's just medium of exchange. It's just the value that it can buy and purchase. And this is what the US dollar is starting to suffer, is that it just doesn't buy as much. It's lost 90% of its wealth since the 1930s. 90% of its buying power. Okay? And this is reflected a little bit in the price of gold and stuff like that. I'm not a person that collects gold, silver. Number one, I'm not rich enough to do that anyway. And, my cat doesn't go get me any gold or silver. She just kind of walks around. You're not a very useful pet. Like, really? Like, go get me some gold or something. Or at least catch a mouse or two. There's freaking still mice in the house and you haven't caught any. But maybe to her, mice are mediums of exchange. So I'll raise you 2 mouse for a cat treat. Hey, barter and trade, there we go. But that's the thing. So with all the crazy things that the bankers are doing right now, and with the bail-ins pretty much everywhere, the bail-ins are ready. Like I said, in the countries with the Ebola, you just watch the gas, the oil, all those resources are going to end up in the Anglo-American central bank system. And it looks like they're going to be. So, and if you look at somebody pointed it out very well, and I was starting to catch on to this too. Look at all the vaccines right now that are being untested, saying, oh, experimental vaccines, but we have to use them to save the planet type of deal. Basically, all the media has been doing with all the fear-mongering is basically one big pharmaceutical commercial. This whole crisis is a giant pharmaceutical commercial. It's, how do we get these drugs approved without actually have to go through the trials? create a crisis. Problem, reaction, solution. And they got it. Problem is there's a lot of poor people that are being, like again, they're at a level that they don't get access to the information I get, and I don't even have a tenth of what's not known. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even have this is just the stuff a guy like me can figure out. So imagine what they're not actually exposing, But you do see the plan as it goes, and as it gets bigger. So the thing is look at Europe right now. France taking that big hit. Their aircraft carrier that they were going to send to Russia. Now they have nobody to buy it. Not good. So a lot of European countries are basically kind of re-guessing and saying, look, going along with the United States sanctions is going to hurt us more than them. Winter's coming. Gas is being shut off. Russia will cut the gas. Well, even if you see, Russia is not. They're being backed into the corner. Again, I'm not saying the Russians are the good guys. They're just the other mobsters that are being fought. It's mobsters that are fighting each other here. Whether it's American ones or British ones or Chinese ones or Russian ones, it doesn't matter. They're all. There's no good guys here. But what is happening is that, let's say Russia doesn't cut off the gas. Well, it'll be sanctioned off and still blamed on Russia. You see what I mean? That's how they're squeezing Putin into a war. Now, there's another thing that was brought up, and I didn't know this, and it's kind of weird because Canada buys an awful lot of, we buy tanks from Germany. We buy an awful lot of stuff from Germany. And Germany is a big weapons exporter. Maybe not the biggest in the world, but they are a pretty big weapons exporter. But apparently they're not that big of a military. And the United States took a lot of their tanks out of Europe before. Now, recently they've been bringing them back and putting them in caves throughout the Netherlands and Denmark and Norway and other places like that, I believe. And I guess many in Germany as well. But it's kind of like they're saying, if Putin did decide to roll tanks in a conventional war sense of the word, not a nuclear war sense of the word, he could be in France by May. They could fight their way up to that far in a conventional war by May. Ouch. Now, that said, when you look at the numbers of NATO versus Russia, Russia can't take NATO all by itself. They would need China in on that one. And they would have China in on that one, because the Chinese know if they don't back the Russians, they're next. Again, like I said probably a couple of years ago, in the end of the day, it will be Russia and China fighting each other, because again, there can be only one. You'll get the quickening, right? It's that bloody chair up the top that they all want to sit in. But we see the tuition hikes here in Canada. It's going to cost people an extra, I can't remember if it was $2,500 or $7,500 over a 4-year. It's a 13 or 15% hike on the tuition. Okay. Now, Canada has been doing some strange things. For example, they increased the unemployment insurance rates last year, whatever, so that. But then now they're cutting it for small businesses up to something like 14 or 15%. They have to, or we're going to go into free fall, right? So, what are the cat and dog doing down there? Oh, ain't that sweet? And they're still, go catch a mouse. And I don't know what to tell the dog to do. Both of you go catch a mouse. Don't smell her butt. That's gross. That's so rude. So rude. Animals. Always interrupting my videos. Anyway, so with that said, it's so we got some really crazy stuff going on. Sanctions, Russia is hitting back on certain things. I believe airliners are now going to have to fly around Russia. That is a very big territory to have to fly around. So if you notice, your airfares are going up. And of course, they're going after companies like Kalashnikov and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, they do sell a few rifles here and there, and they probably make a couple, but it's not really going to hurt Russia, And here's the thing about Russia. This is the whole thing about globalism that drives me nuts. It's the same with China and stuff like that. They build all this stuff, but they don't sell it domestically because they don't want their people to have this stuff. Well, if you sell it domestically, you don't have to worry about foreign interventions. You don't have to worry about sanctions because you're self-sustaining within your own country. Kind of a crazy thing. When people work for themselves, they don't have to be dependent on the government. So, what does this tell you about this? The socialism and all these things. They're really meant to enslave people. They're not meant to help people, and they help a bit. But now here in Canada, our budget is technically balanced. However, you have to understand. Okay, Europe, they went into kind of you might as well say they're in a depression in most of the countries. Okay. You've got the Queen out there just panicking that Scotland's going to, separate, because this is going to hurt. Again, that's money that's not going to come back to the Crown, right? And here in Canada, we should sever our ties with the UK too. I have nothing against the British people themselves, but it's an awful lot of money to pay for Canada's biggest welfare recipient. That's what the Queen is. Just to pay, to have her face on our money. Yes, I'm not saying smite the history. It is a proud history. Yes, we're Well, Canada has multi-proud histories of natives and British and French and Irish and Scottish and Ukrainians and too many to list, the Chinese. Everybody here has a piece of history, okay? But we're all here now. We're pretty much as independent. We're resource rich. Do we really need to be paying $400 million that we know of? That's the minimum, $400 million to the royal family. Do we really need to pay that? And I think that's what Scotland, they have other issues too themselves, but they're starting to question stuff like, why are we paying so much to these people when we could spend it on ourselves? Now, of course, I say if Scotland does, for example, separate, they're going to have a lot of growing pains. But that's, when you're gone, you're gone. Somebody put it very well, and it's the same kind of thing we're dealing here with in Quebec. It's like, okay, they want to separate, okay, they want to use the gym, but they don't want to pay for the membership. And that's very fair. Okay, like for example, here in Quebec, they want to separate, but they still want to get transfer payments from other provinces. Well, that's not going to happen. And now that people are starting to wake up to, hey, wait a minute, the politicians said we'd still get everything, our healthcare, our retirement, and all that. That's not going to happen. And then people say, oh, okay, maybe, Canada ain't so bad. There's not another country I'd rather be in right now. There are no free countries anywhere in the world, period. There's chaotic countries, there's anarchist countries, there's countries in war, and everything is either under socialism or fascism, or socialist, fascist, or communism, or a dictator. That's pretty much every country right now, and this includes Canada. We're socialist, fascist. Not by what our governments claim to be, but by their actions. And what you call a crony capitalist is really a crony fascist. Capitalism is, okay, the only people that are capitalists, and this is going to sound funny, are like drug dealers. Why? Because they got no middleman. They don't get charged tax every time they make a sale. You know what I mean? It's pretty capitalist. You got a product, I want to buy it. I want your money more than you want. Then I want the product. We do medium of exchange, and everybody's happy. That's capitalism. Everything you add in between that is a form of fascism. It doesn't mean all fascism is bad. Again, everything is complex. Too many people are like, okay, we're either on this side or that side. How about you look at the gray in the middle? Moderate is really the best way to go. And there is almost no moderation anywhere on the planet right now, hence why we got the craziness that's going on. Now, that said, again, the bankers out there, ramping up their security because they know the pitchfork revolution is coming, and it's going to be everywhere. With everything that's going to be happening, that's just happening now. Like it's like they just want something to happen to say that if the economy collapses, it's just not our fault. But at the end of the day, yes, it is. The masses, unfortunately, will go along with it. That's why they survived 2008 and they didn't go to jail, because the masses went along with it. Occupy Wall Street, nice idea, but they focused in on the communists, the ones that, okay, government, give me everything, but leave me alone. You can't. It's either you're on your own or you're not. That's what a lot of. But that's what happens when you breed an entitlement mentality into the younger generations, and every generation gets worse. The generation before me was more humble. Generation before them was more humble, and they took nothing for granted. Now everything is a given. Internet is a human right. You know what I mean? First world problems, right? But we're going to get knocked off our stool, and we're going to find out what human rights actually mean. And to me, there are really no such thing as rights. There's only privileges, because anything that can be fought over can pretty much be called a privilege. You might think it's a right, but if somebody's trying to take it from you, you have to fight for it. You know what I mean? It really is. I know it's an oversimplistic way of looking at things, but at the end of the day, it's right. It's correct. That, yes, you have, look at the States, the Constitution, or they trample all over the Constitution. Look at Canada. We trample all over the Constitution all the time as well. So, is it really worth the paper it's written on? Again, the closest to a democracy out there right now would probably be Switzerland with their direct democracy. But they, I think, are allowed to have a little bit more leeway. They're a neutral country, which is smart. But I think they have a little more leeway just because that's where a lot of the bankers hide out. So if not, they would be socialized like the rest of Europe. Look at all the struggles moving right-wing in Europe. You're even seeing it in places like Sweden. Yeah, they just elected a left-wing government, but they're far-right. Well, they're not really far-right groups. They're fascist groups. They're not right-wing. I don't know how they could put right-wing and fascist in the same sentence. They're still a left-wing group, but they're nationalist, fascist kind of. Again, that doesn't mean evil. It just means they want to protect their country and their culture. The UK, the immigration policy of the UK is. Look at UKIP. They call them a right, but they're more nationalist than they are right-wing on a lot of ideas. They're right-wing. But anyway, the Eurozone was a test to see if global governance could work. They don't need the Eurozone anymore. They're just going to integrate everything all in one big Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, TTP. Canada and the European Union has just signed some major big deal. This will probably be a part of the TPP. They're not going to tell you directly what they are doing. They'll bring things in incremental so you don't notice it as much. So, because if they bring this in, well, this is part of the TTP, or TTPP, whatever it is, people will freak out. But if it's, oh no, this is just a trade deal on its own, this is just, but they're all little parts of it. And then when you see the big picture, it's all part of the TTP. And all the TTP goes back to is Agenda 21. Now, unfortunately in Canada, I predict the NDP will win the next government. I don't know if they'll win a majority government. I don't know if where the Liberals are going to land. I think they're going to kind of stay the same. But I can almost guarantee that the NDP is going to win. Why? Thomas Mulcair is out there saying we're going to move retirement back to 65 instead of 67. So that's a big one. Okay. Number two, not so much scandals, but they're, for example, we're getting involved in Iraq. Well, we don't. They're not. Harper's out there saying, yeah, but they're not official capacity military. They're just advisors. It's boots on the ground. People don't want that. And a lot of people get mad at me, but the Harper government has been the best government we've had in a long time, as bad as that is. And I say this for a lot of reasons, because number one, we kept the ship off the rocks in 2008. Don't kid yourself. We've been doing massive austerity since then. Budgets get balanced. For example, we're sending another $7.5 million to for the Ebola outbreak in Africa. We're sending, now most of this humanitarian aid stuff is not too bad, but a lot of it, we're sending $2.5 million to send Czech Republic's heavy lift aircraft so that the Czech Republic can basically load up weapons to take to arm ISIS. Like, why are they getting involved? You know what I mean? Like, stay out of it. Why are we getting, we're not giving them the weapons because we don't have the weapons, but we're using the transport we're getting involved with ISIS. Saudi Arabia is out there saying, oh, well, we need to disarm ISIS, but these are the guys that armed them in the first place. See, Saudi Arabia is going to get thrown under the bus one way or another. They've just made too many enemies. I mean, think about it this way. They like all this chaos. So the CIA gives them the money. They take the weapons. They get the weapons sent to Libya. And the Mossad is, Israel is compliant in this as well. And then they arm the Free Syrian Army. Well, the Free Syrian Army, turns out, is your ISIS guys. That's why they changed the name. They can't call them the Free Syrian. They were the Free Syrian Army, and then, okay, well, no, they're Al-Qaeda. Now, the Al-Qaeda guys are saying, no, these guys are too nuts for us. And in fact, many Al-Qaeda guys have been murdered by the ISIS guys because they weren't radical enough. Like, how twisted is that? I mean, again, and I got some big news coming out on this, and this is going to be quite apocalyptically a religious kind of thing, too. So you have that happening. So then they start calling the Al-Nusra Front, okay? And and then there's a bunch of other ones come out. And okay, well, there's spins off of Al-Qaeda. But there is no moderate rebels over there. There are no moderates in the Middle East. It's just, it's a Mad Max world there. That's what it is. Basically, your best you can't fix it. Your best to just let them run out of ammo. You know what I mean? So they just don't kill each other as quickly. Now, with that said, now they're trying, okay, Einstein's theory of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's like, so Obama's out there, well, this time we're going to arm the moderates. There are no moderates there. And now we're going along with this? Again, this is, I think, just more to get destabilization. Again, it's really against Russia. It's not about terrorism or restoring democracy. Look, you had 13, it's ongoing since 2002 or whatever, after 9/11, to basically get democracy put in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not there. It's not coming. Nobody got the memo. You know what I mean? So here they are. They're going to arm more radicals, keep them, keep the chaos going. The idea is so that Assad can't get the gas lines and Russia can't help develop Syria. Now, this is going to backfire at some point. And again, think about it. Okay, the ISIS guys are ready to attack North America, but yet their biggest enemy they hate the most, Israel, they're not even going to try. Well, but then again, the ex-Mossad agent who is the ISIS leader, there is no such thing as an ex-Mossad agent. Again, it's all command and conquer, divide and conquer, and they know how to. Yes, there are legitimate ISIS guys there that are just legitimate crazy terrorists and fighting for their cause, but the people in charge of everything. Again, you have the Republican Guard that's in on this, and can you really blame these people? I mean, what else would they know? I mean, their country has been just ravaged for decades, because of the central bankers. And none of these guys are going to go to jail for. These are the true terrorists. The guys are funding this. So this idea, well, what, do we sit back and do nothing? Exactly. Let the ammo run out. At least if they have to beat each other over the head with sticks, at least some people can run away. Come on. This is a no-brainer. It's insolvent. You have to let it burn itself out and contain it. Here they are. They have a wide open border in the United States, on the southern border. It's wide open, but they're going to build a containment wall to go between Syria and Libya. Like, really? They can afford that, but they can't, you know what I mean? So the government's priority is not for the people in any country, including here in Canada. And Thomas Mulcair, the problem is if you listen to the way the man speaks, this man is communist through and through. Unlike the Harper government, the Harper government just takes things from you, okay? And they pretty much leave you alone on that. That's bad enough. With the NDP, they're going to force things on you, big time. You will not be able to... Look at how they're playing up the racism stuff right now. As if not a single white person in history's ever been arrested or profiled or anything. Look, I've been profiled several times, I used to be ride around on motorcycles and, dressed like like your typical, Harley biker chopper guy. And I get pulled over all the time. One day I got pulled over 11 times. Tell me I wasn't being profiled? You know what I mean? But that's not racism. You know what I mean? And there's all kinds of things. So they're beating that drum for a certain reason. And that's more because they want people who tend to make noise on certain issues to be quiet. It's a control, cater to a minority group. Again, subversion. It's a subversion tactic to get a certain effect. So, for example, if you're against the police state and, martial law, whenever there's a race riot, you might as well call it a race riot, come out, you're a racist. You can't say nothing against that. Well, you need to do this. How dare you say that? So that's a big part of it, it's to shut people up. Problem is, it's not really working very well. Because, you only need a handful of people to stand up against the tyranny before they're on the ropes. They cave very, very, very easily. Think of how scared these central bankers actually are of the people, because they know they're outnumbered 1 billion to 1, and that's probably pretty literal. There's so few of them. There's 6,000 people that kind of run the planet because people allow them to. That's it. I'm not saying go out there and do something, but where's the brave law enforcement military that's going to go and arrest these guys? They better step up soon because, again, I don't think we're going to see a 1929 style collapse, but I do see that the chokehold. It's like watching two wrestlers have. One guy's got the other guy in a crippler crossface while the other guy's got him, in the spinal mangler mode, and neither guy's getting the upper hand. So it's just who's going to tap out first. So is it going to be the Russia-China or the British, American, European Union central bankers, all those guys, the Goldman Sachs, are they going to tap out first? It's hard to say. But either way, when one side or the other taps out, and I don't think right now Russia has the same upper hand that China has, is that they're basically doing trade outside the U.S. dollar. Are they going to take a hit? Yes. Have they taken a hit? Yes. Economically, they've taken a hit. But their economic sanctions really are not hurting the Russian population like the European population is starting to suffer. Again, the Russian people already know what to do without. After the 90s. They can weather that storm again, and they know, because here's the worst part about Putin, okay, is all he has to do is tell the truth to the people to be able to pull it off. All he has to say, look, the Americans are demonizing us. They've demonized us through the Cold War. They demonize us now. They're trying to they've got a new Cold War going. They're pushing us in a corner, and now they're just attacking. Look, they call a ceasefire in Ukraine. Okay, and guess what happens? Oh, it starts up again. Okay, well, Russia's holding to the ceasefire for the first little bit, and then, we're going to put sanctions on them anyway. So what's the point of having a ceasefire? And they still did the sanctions. You have Poroshenko there saying, most of the Russian rebels, the Russian military guys are gone. They're out of there. Okay, they just given Ukraine distinct status on that side of the country. Oh yeah, but it's all gone. But we're still going to put sanctions on them anyway. Why? Because this agenda has to go forward no matter what. It's full steam forward. There's nothing they can do to stop it because if it's insolvent. The United States dollar is basically toast. It's done. It's done. It's just, it still happens to be the prettiest girl on the block. The other big thing is that when the US dollar does finally just completely become devalued, you're going to see basically an extinction level event of people just basically starving to death. Why? Because that's what's happening now. You know, it's always been that way. Yeah, it's always been that way. The poorest people always suffer first. But the thing is that it's the scale of it it's never been this way. Even through the Dark Ages, it was never this way. You know, even the dinosaurs didn't have this bad after the big space rock hit. You know what I'm saying? The thing is that the money's just not going to be able to buy anything, and that's what people are starting to realize, that everything is just so overinflated. Oh, there's no inflation, but they don't count gas. They don't count the stuff that people need to survive with. Oh, well, iPhones are cheaper than they've ever been. Yeah, but you can't eat an iPhone. Well, maybe you can. There was that guy back in the Guinness Records in the 80s that ate the bicycle. Maybe you could pass it. I don't know. Different strokes for different folks. You know, eat what you can, find food wherever you can. Okay, bicycles and iPhones. Okay, fine, fair enough. You know, but bottom line is that people are noticing that everything is gradually getting so much more expensive. Look, when I was a teenager, $45 to get my driver's license. Now, about $3,000. I'm only 41. But there's no inflation. So where does all that money go? That's what's propping up our socialism. You know, and okay, look, almost every province in Canada is got major cutbacks on the healthcare system. Again, we're doing tons of austerity here, and it's not just the Harper government that's doing it. The provinces are broke, you know, with the exception of a few. But most of the provinces are broke. We can't. It's unsustainable. We have the teachers thing in BC. It's like there's no more money for these people. They don't get it. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. They're gonna, you know, so they got some deals settled out there now. But again, you promise them, and you promise them, you promise them. Just because your union promised you're going to have everything. How many people are they going to have to let go to make this deal happen? You know, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's a mess. So the only thing I can tell people is put food away for sure. Have an emergency plan so that you can weather the storm that's coming. And heading into winter, I think a collapse in winter. By early spring wouldn't be so bad. It'll be bad no matter when it happens. We're not going to be ready for it no matter when it happens. The bail-ins will come in, and that's just going to people are going to be mortified. They're not going to understand what happened. But the bottom line is you know, for those that do kind of get what's going on in the world right now, that the world's a stage. It is clearly a stage. Every mainstream media is playing the same tune, and you know, it's when you really just follow the money, you can really figure out what's going on. And the end game is that people will be so poor and disrupt. The people that are going to take to the streets saying, you know, we want government to fix it, that's a desired effect for the government. That's why they're buying all this. That's what the DHS is for. You know, it's like, again, you have a handful of people up here that are protected by a group of people here, and then all these people here. But the problem is it's when these people here realize what's going on, they side with these people, most of them. The rest of them, well, hang together, hang alone, right? Again, now's the time to put the bankers in jail. Don't wait till the next collapse, because at the next collapse, there will be no freedom anywhere, and it'll get bloody. I'm not making any threats, but look, Greece, Spain, and Italy, they got pretty bloody. You know, like a few people have died because of that, and many people committed suicide. The 1920s, 1930s, I mean, again, it was a pretty dire time. But the people back then were much more self-reliant than they are now. Everybody right now is in infant mode. We're used to even the countries, any country in Europe still has it better than most countries around the world. You know, you know, as bad as that might sound. But everybody is devolving to a, like, basically primal world state. Now, this is a part of the Agenda 21. It's a kill-off program. It is. The thing is the difference in this time in history is that, again, it's the same old ideological subversion play, problem, reaction, Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution play that's been going and going. Problem is people have caught on to it now. And I think YouTube and Facebook and stuff like that, those things, you know, there was just designed to be distractions. You know, I don't even think they were CIA. I think it was just, okay, well, yeah, we'll just let people, because all they're going to do is pass around jokes and drunk pictures of each other and stuff like that, and everybody's going to be watching puppy dogs and bicycles and funny stuff on the YouTube. Nobody expected people to try to put messages out on that. It's a weapon, and now they can't control it. Places like Turkey, why do you think you know, they clamp down on the internet in places like China, Turkey, Russia, places like that, even the Ukraine. Look, there's Ukrainian people starting saying, we never heard of this George Soros guy before, and we don't like him very much. He screwed up our country. And the guy's proud of it, too. You know, so I guess this is a bit of a babble now, but you can see that everything is really, really speeding up, especially with the banks. Interest rates like the European banks, something like 0.15 of an, like, you might as well just give the money, pay to sell the money. Just pay to give it away at that point, So it's getting pretty crazy anyway. So I'm going to leave it at that, so we'll have to wait and see. I will, again, it depends how busy I am the next couple of days. I'm just kind of getting back to working. I go like that in spurts where I work like crazy, and then I got a bunch of time off, work like crazy. Saturday morning is shoot 30-point buck morning. Can't wait. Oh, I hope I get one. Anyway, and then of course Friday is the 18th, which is the Scottish referendum. And I will weigh in on that one and make you have people, the sovereigntists that are going over there. They want to see how they're conducting their referendum so that it can be successful here. There's a huge difference, and in order that I have to dive into the history of Canada and stuff like that. And it will be interesting. And if you are Scottish watching this, even from the Canadian perspective, there's probably a lot of things about Canada you didn't know that. The Scottish have a huge influence on Canadian policies. Not modern day policies, but there's a lot of things came from Scotland here. But to understand, where we were and where we were, where we are and where we're going. Well, again, there's a reason why the Quebec referendum, which you could say technically we had another one early this year with the Bloc Parti Québécois, Bloc Québécois, Parti Québécois, the same freaking party. The lefter of the left is still the left. So anyway, you want to separate in the middle, separate on the right, separate on the left. It's still, it still is what it is. But there's a lot of things that Quebec is like. They don't understand what Scotland has that we don't. And unity is one of them, because the province here, it's not so much just a yes and no thing. It's people don't want to be under Marxism. You could call it Marxism, fascism, libertine, with a hint of nationalism. That's what we got here in Quebec with our separatist party. They're not even really nationalists. They don't want to benefit the entire province. They just want to benefit a group of people in the, to have libertine. They can have everything, and nobody else can have anything. And it's kind of a crazy idea. Where Scotland, everybody's kind of on the same page, and they're doing it for the country, not for just a group in the country, so to speak. And of course, there's some people that yes or no on that. But anyway, I'll weigh in on that one to see what the verdict is on Friday. Hopefully, I'll get a few more videos out tomorrow. So there we go. So I'm going to go take advantage of that break ball of gas in this guy because I haven't seen it in such a long. It's been rain. It even rained this morning. I can't. Anyway. So anyway, there we go. So have a great day. We'll talk to you guys later. G'day, hey, hi, and welcome. I think there's a weird bright thing in this guy. I haven't seen it in a while. All right, just kind of a geopolitical update. Nothing in specific, but just kind of a lot of stuff going on. I haven't been able to post there in the past couple of days because it's starting to get busy again. So, with that said, lots going on. We have the Scottish referendum coming up. I'm going to be covering that in its own special video. I don't know everything about Scotland, but there's an awful lot of Scottish heritage here. And then, of course, there's a lot of people here taking notice in my province of Quebec about how Scotland's getting, their simple referendum question worked out with such. It looks like it might be a go, and what that can mean for the world. Now the thing is, there's just too much to dive into there. That's why I'm going to save it as its own video, probably by Friday. I just want to see how it's going to turn out. I could make the video now, but the problem is that I think what we're going to see, depending on a yes or no vote from Scotland, is how it's going to affect the rest of the world, and it will. I think if Scotland goes the way of Iceland, that is going to put a crunch on the U.S. dollar, not directly, but indirectly, because it shrinks the Anglo-American empire. And again, it means central bankers will lose control of that area, kind of like in Iceland. That's why you never hear of Iceland look. In 2008, when Iceland threw their corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, you never heard anything about it on the mainstream news at all. Why? Because they don't want that to catch on, and they've got the right idea. I'm not saying Iceland is perfect, but on the other hand, when people break the law, at least they throw people in jail there, And coming from the country that has like the lowest crime rate ever. Now, Scotland versus Quebec, there's a lot of similarities, but there's way more differences in their referendum compared to the one here. Number one, this is the most corrupt province in the country. People don't, they don't want to be. We're Canadians. We're going to be Canadians. They may be French Canadians, but trust me, we're Canadians. History and all, people tend to side with Canada. That said, I'll address that in a separate issue. There's also a couple of other places that are, I think Catalonia's, I don't know if they separated yet or not. I think they were talking about it. There's a whole bunch of places that are trying to separate. There's always been a secession movement, say, in Texas and stuff like that. But you could see, too, as a plan, I've always thought the divide and conquer plan of the United States was a major play. The bankers would love to have 52 independent countries to pick apart. Again, believe it or not, the states is actually stronger together, each state banding together. It's just they need to throw their corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, which they haven't done, but they should. And the bankers know this, so they want to actually break up the states before that, because at that point, that's when China comes in and just, well, they're already coming in and buying up everything anyway. But it'll make it even easier for them, because they can control, again, when, let's say Texas and New York State, okay? We'll take those two. Let's say China... let's say the states, every state breaks on up into its own sovereign country. We'll just say for hypothetical. So China comes in, or maybe not China, but it could be anybody. Well, we'll say, for example, China. They come in and say, okay, well, we're taking over here. This is our... people in the neighboring states, say Pennsylvania or Illinois or someplace like that, say, well, that's their problem. And then Illinois gets conquered by some other foreign adventure, whatever. And then Pennsylvania, and then it works its way down. Next thing you know, you're in Florida, and by that time, it's like, oh, do we band together and create a new, a new state, like a new country again? By that time, it's too late. Why? Because they've already got a foothold. So, and it won't be like conquer as in rolling tanks so much. It'll be conquer as in they're going to come and buy up everything, like they already have. And again, that's part of the free trade, Chinese free trade zones. There's about 270 of them being built in the States. Basically, these are Chinese sovereign nations. This is the big thing that you're not hearing on the mainstream media. It's not that these people are buying up. What they're doing is they're accepting payment for the U.S. treasuries. Like China bought 10% of the U.S. debt, something like that. Okay, so that's billions of dollars. So 10% of, well, at the time was $4 billion or $4 trillion or whatever. But what's ended up happening now is quite simply is that China, they don't want to be stuck with useless pieces of paper or digital currency that's not even worth the paper it's not even printed on. What they want instead is to turn it into something. So, okay, well, that factory's out of business. Okay, well, you owe us this much. Just take it off of that and we'll take the factory. They're getting assets. And all banks right now are being told to acquire a certain amount of assets. Basically, every bank is preparing for a massive collapse. And there are banks that are already just kind of, the dominoes are already starting to fall. Started with, I think, Portugal and about a month or so ago, and there's a few African banks that are already gone down. With the Ebola thing, basically the central bankers are going to get in there, saying, oh, well, your economies are destroyed because of the Ebola crisis, which I'm starting to really believe it's manufactured now. Yes, they are that evil. Yes, they would do that. Why? Because now all these economies that are going to need bailouts from the central bankers, but they're basically all the countries that have the Ebola outbreaks in it are all the countries that are basically China friendly. Now, this is how, and again, with China buying up all the world's reserves of gold, basically the daily production of gold, that's basically what they're buying on a daily